Whoa.
So we're now moving forward to the year 1644. The war has been a stalemate. Neither side can gain the upper hand. King Charles I has sent his nephew, Prince Rupert, to the north of England to raise the siege of York. York is held by the Royalists, but it's being besieged by an English parliamentarian army and also a Scots army, the Scots Covenanters. The Royalists must break this siege. They must hold York to keep the north of England in control for the King's cause. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're now going back to the year 1644. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm now going to hand over to our commentary for the Battle of Marston Moor.
Thank you very much. Welcome everybody to Sunday this afternoon. Very authentic weather for Marston Moor. Marston Moor started in a thunderstorm, 2nd of July 1644. My name is Ian Bailey. I'm your commentator this afternoon, and on behalf of the Sealed Knot Society, welcome to the English Civil War. Sealed Knot Society was formed in the late 1960s by Brigadier Peter Young, DSO Bar MC Bar, and we are Europe's largest reenactment society. We fight battles all over the country, and today we're very pleased and a great pleasure being invited by English Heritage for us to present a representation of Marston Moor using 2 of our brigades. On the top of the field you'll see in the red coats the Royalist Army deploying, and marching on to the bottom of the field by the commentary position, the beginning of the Scottish and Covenant and Parliamentary Army. At the front we have Colonel Hugh Fraser's Dragoons. Fraser's Dragoons coming from the Aberdeenshire area at the time of the Civil War. The Civil War, as has been said, was really a battle over one man, one vote. Parliament believed that every man should have a vote so long as he had land, whereas the King believed he was the one man with the one vote. Marston Moor was one of the deciding points in the English Civil War. It's where the war basically was effectively lost. York was lost by the King. But let's cut back to the battlefield now and see the armies marching on. One of the great problems of the Battle of Marston Moor was the link between 2 Royalist armies, the army of the Earl of Marquess of Newcastle, the northern armies of the King, and Prince Rupert, who had led a relief force via Bolton and Liverpool, straight over from Skipton past Knaresborough to relieve York. Rupert was a very dynamic force in the course of the Civil War, but had a very hot head. He had before the war been held as a prisoner and been released as King Charles I's nephew to help prosecute the war. One of the problems facing the Royalist Army was one of the officers on the day he was captured and referred to as Moor and held was General King, Lord Itham, who was commanding Newcastle's foot. And at the beginning of the battle, as the forces arrayed, Rupert is trying to exert his control over the Royalist Army. First of all, in his discussion with the Marquess of Newcastle. The Marquess of Newcastle's troops are late, and Rupert rode over to remonstrate with Newcastle about exactly what was going on.
Well, they're probably the ones that look after me.
My Lord Newcastle, at last! I wish you would come sooner with your forces, but I hope we shall yet have a glorious day.
Your Highness, certain administrative issues, pay, mere trifles, but now I am arrived, albeit only with my gentleman of horse. But rest assured, sir, my full force will be here within hours. That being so, will you not wait? As my men are not yet fully assembled, Your Highness, why fight at once? The parliamentarians and Scots might go their separate ways if left to themselves, and we shall also be further reinforced by Montrose within a few days.
There's no time to waste. If I can destroy this force of rebels and Scotchmen, this so-called army of both kingdoms, then the war in the north is good as won. I must needs wait upon your lambs, your whitecoats from York, but as soon as they arrive, we attack and fall upon the Roundhead rebels. Surprise may yet be on our side.
Rupert of the Palatinate remonstrating with Newcastle. Where are his lambs? Where are his troops? At the moment we see a very strong contingent from the parliamentary armies of the Northern Association under Lord Ferdinand of Fairfax and his son Black Tom Fairfax, the Eastern Association under the Earl of Manchester, and also we have the forces of the Scottish Covenant. These being deployed in front of you. Parliamentary armies are looking at the Royals' position. They've been staring at each other, actually, at this point of battle for almost a day as the armies have been arriving. There was great confusion. The Royalist army is now trying to coordinate its control, but meanwhile the parliamentarian generals are debating, should they fight a battle today or not? The Lord Levin, the commander of the Scottish Covenant forces, a veteran of the 30 Years' War, starts to remonstrate with the parliamentary officers.
Look at the enemy array before you. Prince Rupert is outnumbered. We finally have the advantage of him. We must seize this opportunity. We must attack. What say you, my Lord Manchester? Our siege lines around York are broken, and the garrison has marched forth to reinforce Rupert. As we yet speak, I see their vanguard approaching. All the more reason to attack him now before they can deploy. But the day draws on. It is almost evening. Have we time enough?
Time enough to pray to the Lord of Hosts before battle, yet still defeat this papist army of the north, my lord.
Ah, Cromwell. I wondered where you were. So, gentlemen, we are agreed. Whilst the ungodly cavaliers take their ease and prepare their encampment, we attack. Let us now pray for victory.
One of the great problems the Royalist Army had at the Battle of Marston was it couldn't see the full Parliament Army deploy and wasn't aware of the actual size of the Parliamentary Army. The Parliamentary Army at this time was a force very much coming together, and one of its key coordinating factors was religion, and particularly before the battle, the singing of psalms.
Oh, all ye nations of the world, praise ye the Lord always, and all ye people everywhere, set forth his noble praise, for great his kindness is to us, his truth endures for all. Wherefore praise ye the Lord our God, praise ye the Lord, I say.
The first shot fired. The artillery of the Parliament Army is now open fire on the Royalist Army. The Royalist Army wasn't expecting to fight this day. Rupert had actually just set his troops down to rest, but the instructions of Lord Leven and the dynamism, particularly the cavalry commanders in the Eastern Association, saw that things were beginning to turn towards a full-pitch battle. Commanding the horse of the Eastern Association, the Army of Parliament, was an up-and-coming young MP, making his debut in the first major battle as a general, one Oliver Cromwell. The Royalists must be getting pretty anxious because they're significantly outnumbered, but I do hear, coming on the top end of the field now, finally, at last, is the York Garrison. Newcastle's Lambs, so named after their whitecoats. Originally it was intended that the Marquess of Newcastle's regiment would be equipped in red coats, but the dye could not get through to the uniform. "Do not worry," said Newcastle's men, "for we will dye our coats red with parliamentarian blood." Whilst the armies are coming on, it is worth noting the coat colours are not consistent within the armies. This is very typical of the Civil War, when there was no straight method of supply. Also, it's worth noting that you have the pike and shot formed within one unit. The English Civil War was fought before the introduction of the bayonet. A musket, a matchlock musket, can take up to half a minute to reload. During that time, the musketeer is vulnerable to cavalry. The pikeman's job, therefore, with his 16-foot ash pike, is to keep the cavalry away from the musketeer. The musketeer's job is to provide firepower to protect the pikeman from being killed at a distance. The queen of the battle are the cavalry. The cavalry are armed with sword and ideally 2 pistols. 1 man in 3 would probably issue with a carbine as well for garrison duty. There are 2 ways cavalry fight in the Civil War. The first is the traditional method of marching at the trot, knee to knee, as practised by the parliamentary cavalry. The second is the gallop, the charge at the gallop, imported from the continent by Prince Rupert. What you can see now of the armies flourishing their colours, a way of taunting the enemy, but it looks like the infantry of the Eastern Association, which you see largely on the right of the field in their red and russet coats, their blood is up and they're moving forward. You'll see there the blue colour with the red diamonds of the Earl of Manchester's own regiment, and next to that the blue colour and red colour of Earl Grey's regiment. The artillery firing it. It looks like the Eastern Association are going to try and engage. It looks like they're engaging actually with Newcastle's Lambs. Now, Newcastle's whitecoats have been protecting York from siege, a very close and deadly siege. Their troops are now tired, slightly mutinous, but very loyal to their cause, particularly to the Marquess of Newcastle. There over the field, have we seen Rupert's got his blood up. There is a Royalist cavalry charge there. They are engaging, and it appears now that the parliamentary horse are now making a move towards the Royalist cavalry.